Hey guys, LevelCap here, and today we're going to be checking out NVIDIA's new Geforce Now game streaming service. NVIDIA contacted me and asked me to check it out, and I'd like to give them a big thank you for sponsoring this video. Now, if you're not familiar with Geforce Now, it's a cloud gaming service that lets you play games you already own or free-to-play titles by streaming them to your PC, a Mac, the NVIDIA Shield, or an Android device like a phone. All the high-end computing is done remotely on NVIDIA servers, so you can play on any sort of device regardless of how powerful it is or how much money you spend on its graphics card. Your phone can play the best looking PC games at the maximum graphics settings, no problem. Getting set up is really straightforward. When you launch a game in Geforce Now, it shows you the login screen for its client. So for Steam games, you'll just get the Steam client login. For Epic Games, you'll get their client, and so on and so forth. Just sign in and you'll be able to play any supported Geforce Now title in your library. You can also enable features like ray tracing without needing to own an NVIDIA RTX GPU. Now, I wouldn't blame you if you were a little skeptical of cloud gaming without having tried it. I was too. In fact, I couldn't imagine how the latency could be anywhere near fast enough to make competitive gaming viable. Lag and image quality are big considerations for me as a gamer. But after a few minutes, I completely forgot that these games were being streamed to my PC instead of being run locally. And I realize some people are going to remain skeptical even after hearing me say that. But the cool thing is you don't have to take my word for it. Geforce Now has a free tier that lets you play for 1 hour per session. The Geforce Now app itself is very straightforward. Just search for games to add to your Geforce Now library, and any games you own or supported free-to-play titles will work once you sign into the required client. One of the really big draws for me is that there's no waiting on game downloads. Once you're signed into the game client, it's ready to play. You don't have to download games or updates. Not only is this convenient, especially if you have a slower internet connection, but playing on something like a cell phone that literally doesn't have the memory space to download a big PC title, it's really awesome playing a full-fledged PC game on such a small device. Now, to test out the service, I played GTFO and Control. I picked GTFO specifically because I knew video encoders really struggle with high contrast dark scenes. Geforce Now essentially runs the game on a server and sends you a video feed of the output. At the max stream settings, it looked and felt like a native 1080p game. Now, since Control is a complex looking game and it supports the latest tech like ray tracing, I figured it'd also be a good test of both the quality and features Geforce Now offers. Typically, I'd expect the video feed for a game like this to look similar to how it does on YouTube. There'd be tons of blocking and artifacts in the shadow and darker areas. And while YouTube's compression of this video might degrade the quality a bit, I think you can see in this still frame that the overall image is very clean. In person, it looks even better. And as for any noticeable input lag, at worst, I'd say it felt like playing a game at 60 FPS when you're used to playing at 144 FPS. It really isn't noticeable, even in a game like GTFO that demands a high level of precision. Control is one of those games that looks best with ray tracing. Unfortunately, high-end ray tracing requires a lot of computer power, and most people just don't have that, especially if you're playing on something like a phone. The paid tier of Geforce Now lets you run games with RTX enabled. Switching RTX off and on in Control here should give you a pretty decent idea of how powerful this is. This scene in particular stood out because with RTX off, the reflection of your character in the entire world just disappears. Control on Geforce Now also supports DLSS 2.0, which is NVIDIA's AI-powered upscaling technology. This lets you run the game at a lower internal resolution to improve frame rate without sacrificing visual quality. Upscaling games from a lower resolution generally doesn't look that great, but DLSS 2.0 doesn't just upscale a game, it uses AI data to intelligently recreate missing details and information that you lose when dropping the resolution. The end result is an image that looks shockingly close to your chosen output resolution, if not better in some cases, while running at a much higher frame rate. Normally, both DLSS 2.0 and RTX ray tracing require an NVIDIA GPU, but with Geforce Now, you get the benefit of having access to both without needing an RTX-capable GPU yourself. Now, the big draw of Geforce Now for me is that it just works on so many devices. It works on Mac, the Shield TV, Android devices. So if you don't have a PC or device that can run the latest games at high settings, it's a great alternative to splurging on expensive hardware, especially with prices being what they are today. There are, of course, limitations that you will want to keep in mind. The first is the maximum resolution you can play at is 1080p. You're also limited to a maximum of 60 frames per second unless you enable the competitive preset, which does enable 120 FPS, but it limits your resolution to 720p. That said, if you already own really high-end displays capable of higher frame rates or high-end resolutions, chances are you also have hardware that can push games to those resolutions and frame rates. Considering it also works on mobile devices, I'd say it's a pretty big deal to be playing PC titles running on PC hardware with your phone over the internet. It's kind of awesome. It's something I didn't think we would be doing even 5 years ago. Now, the other big technical limitation is bandwidth. Geforce Now offers 3 preset options and a custom mode that lets you pick your resolution, frame rate, max bit rate, and more. The preset range goes from 10 gigabytes an hour to 4 gigabytes an hour, but you can drop it down to 2 gigabytes an hour with the custom mode. Obviously, keep your ISP data cap and bandwidth restrictions in mind. If your internet connection is reliable, you should be able to get Geforce Now working even if it's not super fast. And if you've got a decent internet connection, this service is going to run incredibly well. Again, there's a free tier that doesn't limit the streaming quality option, so you can test it out on your own to see how well it's going to work with your internet connection. Now, I'll admit I had been skeptical of game streaming ever since the early days and prototypes of these platforms. Back then, game streaming was a bit of a pipe dream. It required insanely expensive internet connections, and even then it provided a very subpar experience. I think that first impression really stuck with me for a long time, despite things changing for the better so drastically. And I certainly wouldn't blame anyone for being skeptical if you haven't tried game streaming for a while or you've never tried it, but now is the best time to give it a try because, well, it's free. You can play for solid hour sessions at a time to see if it's something you might be interested in. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, this service probably isn't for everybody out there. If you've spent thousands and thousands of dollars building the ultimate gaming PC, and that's where you do all of your gaming and there's nothing that takes you away from that, then this service might not be as valuable to you. But if you're a gamer who still has a high-end PC but wants to do some of your high-end gaming in different rooms of the house, or you travel a lot, or you have downtime at work where you could play your favorite titles but your work PC isn't powerful enough, then I could certainly see more interest in this. And of course, if you don't have a high-end gaming platform, then this could save you a huge amount of money in the long run and still allow you to play some of the latest and greatest titles at their best visual quality, allowing you to experience things that are going to look way better than they do on the console platform even. After testing it out for myself, I really have to say that this service does live up to the hype. The image quality on a good connection is great. The input lag is barely noticeable, if even at all, and not having to rebuy games that I already own just to play them on a different platform or remotely is a huge win over competing services. If you're interested in checking out Geforce Now, there's a link in the video description. For a limited time, NVIDIA are offering the paid membership for $4.99 a month. So check it out, guys. I highly recommend it. This has converted me to a believer of the game streaming service, and I'm very curious to see just how many gamers end up using game streaming services down the road, considering how good it's gotten. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing off.